Good morning. It's July 25th. This is a scheduled hearing on the proposed 1/4% sales tax. May we begin with the pledge to the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Riddell.
Here.
Commissioner Moore. Commissioner Gallagher.
Here.
We have a quorum. Today is the second hearing for the purpose of the providing and supporting criminal and administrative justice services in Lorain County for a continuing period, an increase of an existing tax levy pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 5739.021 and 5741.021 by the rate of 1/4%, increasing the currently existing tax levy pursuant to Revised Code 5739.021 and 5741.021 by the rate of 1/4% for Lorain County Sheriff's Office operations, with all revenue from such increase supporting criminal administrative justice services in Lorain County for Lorain County Sheriff's Office.
Okay, in the interest of accuracy and consistency, this morning since we had to redo the two hearings, we did it on Tuesday. This morning, we're gonna replay the hearing from the previous Friday, and that way all the information will be exactly the same, and everybody that's been watching whichever hearing will be operating with the same information. So Todd, can you put that on, please?
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having me back. I'm going to pick up kind of where we left off on Tuesday, it was. And I'd like to go a little bit more in-depth into the budget line items and how this sales tax affects us as a county. So you can see by the slide that I just put up, these are the tax rates for the entire state of Ohio. And when you look at Lorain, you can see us in dark blue up there. And as you can see on the bottom of it, that is one of the 4 counties with 6.5% or below. I missed a slide, so I'm going to go backwards. The current state tax rate is 5.75%. So of the 6.5% we currently have, 5.75 goes to the state already. Just making certain that we clarify that, because as a resident or citizen who might be purchasing things in our county, they need to know that all of that sales tax does not go to the county. I think that's an important thing to note for us. As I said on Tuesday, our overall budget for this year is $31,232,398, and next year it's estimated to be $35,500,000. I wanted to make certain I went into some detail. These are the jail expenses, and you can see the history of those jail expenses and each expenditure line item. The top section is personnel for this year. This is the largest increase you'll see with overall budget, and that is because of the transport team that will save us overall in the long run. We're paying for them for $750,000 for standard housing, almost up to $1 million. For us to house prisoners that come to our jail from other counties or places within the state that are needed for court and on orders, and then trying to get them back, we do not have the personnel for transport. We would also be then putting in armed corrections officers instead of deputies for these transports, and not having them sit on these prisoners at the hospital or any prisoner at the hospital. That corrections team would do that, which would then free up deputies to be on the road. Right now, we take from the road as is necessary for any prisoner that is at the hospital that is in our care. We're required to get them care if our medical team deems it necessary to have them go to a hospital, and that then ties up deputies that should be on the road serving the public. You can see the line items underneath, the supplies all the way down through advertising and printing. I can answer any questions that you'd like about those individual line items when I'm done, so that you have a better feel of what is involved in each of these line items. But remember, I'm making an estimate based on only 6 months in this position, and trying to make certain that I can forecast as well as I possibly can, knowing what the expenses have been. I want you to know that I have signed off on every single requisition and checked every single vendor to make certain that these vendors are the ones that we should be using, that we're getting the best prices, et cetera. This is the general fund budget. Again, the top section, you'll see the expenditure changes for personnel. A big chunk of that obviously is pension, healthcare, et cetera. Those costs of personnel really drive that number up from what you would believe, and I realize that that is a good part of our budget. Then the bottom section is all of our expenditures. And again, this year, I mentioned it on Tuesday, but the equipment leases is a big portion of the budget parts of the line items. And that is because we didn't account for that this year. It was never included in a line item. That was $255,000 for this year. That was not in there, but I did maneuver some things around to make certain that it is covered. So I covered it for 25 by cutting some places that I said, well, we can rob from Peter to pay Paul, basically, one line item to another, but then next year we will have to make certain it's covered. So you'll see there's a large increase in that, and that is why. And once we hit the 4-year rotation, almost 5-year rotation of all vehicles, that number will stay steady. So we're looking at another increase, but every year those numbers go down as how many vehicles we need. And you'll see that happens, and then the following year, we just stay steady at whatever that number is. And I anticipate it being just under $1 million for vehicles per year. And if we had to purchase them, obviously they'd be far more expensive. The other item that we spend a lot in is supplies and materials. And I would think that when you look at that is and gasoline, and that's obvious, is almost everything you can imagine when you hire someone new, besides the supplies that it takes to run the entire agency. Again, looking at the budget between last year and this year, the increase is mostly personnel, and that is for the transport team. And I am going to let the sheriff speak on that when I'm finished, just so that you have that as a reference as to why that would need to be increased and why we're doing that. But as you can see, there are very few things that are going up in costs other than equipment lease. And when you say other expenses, that's pretty much all of the other things that you see within the line items that are listed. The comparison between the two budgets. So what will it cost the end user? So as a citizen, what am I going to be paying for this 0.25% tax increase? On $100, it is a quarter. It's a quarter that means a lot to us. On $10,000, it's $25. And what can that 0.25% do for the sheriff's office? If the 0.25% passes, the general fund contribution capped at the unfunded amount from taxes at $7 million this year saves the county $13 million from the general fund this year, keeps the public safety strong, preserving funds for other county needs, and avoiding future cuts or emergency fixes to fund the sheriff's office. And a 0.25% now will really avoid a much bigger price for us later. Most important thing is that we have been able to maneuver and put as many personnel as we can, many sworn deputies as we can on the road right now. And I think that is saying exactly what the mission of the sheriff's office is, which is public safety. And I think the sheriff has backed up all of his promises that he made during his campaign in that respect. And I'm going to leave this over to the sheriff so he can give you a closer, and then I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, President Riddell and Commissioner Moore and Commissioner Gallagher. One of the points that I want you to draw your attention to in the public is on this current slide. The proposed sheriff's office budget for 2026 is set at $34 million. The current budget is over $31 million right now. What I want the commissioners and the public to understand is that this year's budget, we were actually cut from 2024 to 2025 by $750,000. In addition to that $750,000 reduction in our budget, we had to come back, if you recall, to this commission for over $250,000 to pay for funds being requested from 24 back to 25 to pay for unencumbered expenses. No purchase orders, no encumbrances that were made on that budget to pay for the bills that were actually incurred in 2024 that we were receiving late notices on, as well as requests to pay in 2025. So that's $1 million. In addition to that, when we took over the office, there were spreadsheets that were created that were forwarded to the budgeting office, Casey Saunders' office, underneath the commissioners. In adding up those figures on those spreadsheets that we were looking at, that was an additional 1.8 million in mathematical errors on those Excel spreadsheets for what the sheriff's office deemed was needed for their budget and what was actually reported because the math wasn't right on the calculations for the spreadsheet. So all in all, when we look at the 1.8 million we were off, the 750,000 that our budget was actually cut by for this year, and the $250,000 that we had to come back to, we're about where we are anyways, and being right on target for what we're asking for. These are true numbers that we are looking at here. This is not some big jump or increase. We are not asking for a lot of that. And when we look at that too, I'm going to point to two of our majors in particular right now. Major Steve Scharschmidt, who's sitting in the front row, and behind him is Major Heath Tester. Major Scharschmidt is in charge of the Major Crimes Task Force for the Lorain County Sheriff's Office, and Major Tester is in charge of Special Operations and Intelligence. Between these two men, they have done a tremendous amount of work with the state and federal governments in basically making that entire building nearly self-sufficient out there. And the amount of grant monies that both majors and their staffs were able to garner for the operation of all of our intensive investigations, high-profile investigations, drug investigations, and most importantly, the human trafficking investigations that we have going on right here in Lorain County that a lot of people don't understand. We have more turnpike exits than any other county in Ohio, and with those come the hotels and other industries that facilitate that human trafficking trade, and these gentlemen right here are responsible for combating that. In addition to that, Major Gordon, who's sitting in the back row, has a lot to do with the jail budget and ensuring that he's working with the chief deputy and the corrections business manager for things like healthcare costs, prescription drug costs, that we were able to, as we pointed out in the first public meeting that we had, that we were able to reduce those costs by 40%, and that contract actually takes effect beginning this quarter for the budget cycle. Also, Major Carpina, who's in the row there, he's overseeing training and also the entire road patrol division. The biggest face of our office sits with Major Carpina in regards to the actual marked cars, the deputies who take the calls. Major Carpina has been very efficient in taking all of the personnel that used to be working Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 in the office, putting all those personnel back on the road, and the jobs that they were doing them, actually assigning them to the 5 admins that we had in the office to make sure that they had a full day or more to be able to fulfill work in there as well. And then last but not least is Major AJ Torres, who, as far as what the reception that we have received by the Lorain County public right now, is fully the responsibility of his office, the social media presence that we had, and everything, including the Juneteenth presentation that we were able to provide in downtown Elyria, as we were welcomed by the community to be able to be there. None of this happened before. We came into office, and a lot of that is Major Torres' responsibility, all reporting to the chief deputy, who makes sure that they do their job on a regular basis. One of the main things that we're looking at, we keep talking about this prisoner transport unit. In regards to the prisoner transport unit, we want to make sure that we don't have commissioned armed deputies that are sitting on people in the hospital, that are transporting them to their doctor's appointments, their dentist appointments, their dialysis appointments. Every time we have a medical issue that somebody has to be transported out of the jail to a care facility, that has to be a deputy that is taken off the road, taken out of Major Carpina's rotation, and have to be used to do that. That's one less deputy that's out there to protect the citizens of Lorain County. In addition to that, we're working with the common police courts, as I had testified to at the first public hearing, in regards to lowering the cost and making sure that we have an efficient movement of inmates from the state prisons. We have 3 on State Route 83 here in the county. Anytime a crime is committed within that state correctional institution, that comes here to Lorain County Court of Common Pleas and is decided there. We're transporting prisoners right from 83 to Murray Ridge Road, to other prisons within the state of Ohio. That all takes deputies. That transport time takes away from the road and the protections of our citizens to do that. Gentlemen, we spent $1.1 million of the county's money last year in transporting prisoners or keeping prisoners within the Lorain County Jail in order to effectuate what we are required to do by order of the court. That $1.1 million does not include their hospital costs. That $1.1 million does not include the overtime of deputies having to sit on these prisoners in the hospital or a medical appointment. So by putting that staff in, we look to remove $750,000 or $750,000 in costs from the budget to make sure that we're more effectively spending the county's money on that, and that's why that is an important part of this program as well. So as the chief stated, if we look at what our actual ask is for the 226 budget at $34 million, I think we're about $300,000 off from the total figure of what we had to come back to you for, what we were shorted in 2025, in addition to the $1.8 million miscalculation that was provided by the prior administration. So we are providing a lot more services, being a lot more effective and a lot more efficient for actually the same amount of money. So I thank you, the chief thanks you for our opportunity to present this to you in the public today, and we are open for any questions and regarding the specificity of any of the line items in the budget or why we are asking for this 0.25%, which I want to also reiterate what the chief said before, takes the politics out of the budget. So that 0.25% goes directly to the Lorain County Sheriff's Office, and no offense to the three commissioners, but there could become a point in time that you're not in alignment with, where we're going. But maybe the public is, or vice versa, and we just want to make sure that we're accountable directly to the people who vote us into this office and the budget that they provide us, and this is the best way that we feel that that can be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to make one clarification. At the 34 million versus the 35.5 I had on your other slide, the 35.5 includes the transport team, and this 34 does not. But we want to make certain that I'm giving you all of the facts. That's why those two are a different number. Any questions for me?
And the major issue is that by adding, we're not really cutting by adding the transport team, but what we're doing is keeping people in the right alignment to give much greater service by not taking deputies off of the road to handle transport.
Well, it's that, Commissioner, and it is also the medical bills associated with prisoners, which can be a very cumbersome number over the course of the time that they're with us. Because if they're life prisoners, a lot of times they have issues that need to be then attended to. And the cost of overtime to have a deputy sit on them if we are short on the road, and to make certain that we're paying those medical bills or dental bills, et cetera.
Just so everybody's aware, what we're really talking about is a dedicated revenue stream. That does not mean that this board is going to be giving up its power in order to review how that spending moves forward. It's pretty much on how the current 0.25% for the jail is being handled. Your request today is pretty much, when we say take politics out of it, we can debate that all day. But the fact of the matter is, you're still operating about $7 to $8 million short. So the general fund, you'll be giving us enough relief as we move forward for the next stage that we have to deal with. But I like the concept that it's going to be up to the public to decide on how we move forward as a county. And I hope the public sees today what you guys just presented, that you're on top of it.
Commissioner Moore, I wanted to make certain I clarified that these funds would go, this money would go into a specific fund within the general fund budget that is then dedicated to us.
Correct.
But you will be our checks and balances
Correct.
at all times.
Well, not only us, but so will be the auditor. So it's going to
Correct.
be, just want to make sure that was clarified. So.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to live. That's the first chance I've had a chance to hear what I sound like when I don't hear myself. I want to thank you for being here today, Sheriff, and to answer questions. And again, thank you for sitting through the tape. And if you want to see those things again, this is recorded on YouTube, and you can climb on and Google YouTube Lorain County Commissioners Tax Hearing, and you can get all of that information, as well as through public records request. Everything that was here today is public records. So at this point, we've heard from the sheriff and staff as to the need for the funding. You heard from Commissioner Moore that this is a reallocation, so it's time to hear from the public. So who would like to start? Go ahead. Come on up and give us your name and address. Come to the podium so that we can record your comment.
My name is Michael McCrae. I live in Elyria, Ohio, at 125 Denison. We've had that house, me and my wife, since 1993, and I lived here briefly as a kid back in the 60s. So I think the reason that people should, I support this increase, and I'll tell you why. This is a tax that it's on consumption. The more you spend, the greater your tax, if I understand what sales tax is about. So it's not disproportionately picking on anybody because, you know, I can't afford a $70,000 car, but somebody that could should be paying, you know, they'll be paying for that. So a lot of this is, and a lot of these increases are beyond the control of anybody. I realize that, you know, for the increase. Well, the thing that I really want to run well. I like the idea of the sheriff's people being out on the road, but the jails to me are of significant importance that they run right, and those people have access to mental health care. There are groups that go in there and provide. I might be in our jail, but in other jails I know that, you know, there's missions that go into these jails to reach people. Why? Because I've worked for, I'm a photographer, and one of the things I photographed for 18 years was social issues. Now these are things I don't make money on. I'm a medical photographer, and I photographed homeless veterans and homelessness around the world in different states. And I've interviewed people for the Homeless Grapevine in Cleveland and realized a lot of these people have mental health issues. And, you know, they need the care, they need the support, they have to have the funding to pay for all that. And some of them are serious, and that's the reason they're there in the first place. The other group that I've run into, and I know quite a bit, and is drugs is a big problem. And when you talk about trafficking, drugs, and all these things, that's one organization. And I am a veteran of several things. I'm a veteran, Vietnam era veteran. I was trained in asymmetric warfare. I was last group trained for Vietnam, but I didn't go there. And I also have been in Afghanistan during the 80s. I've been there. I knew the Mujahideen. I traveled, and I realized at that point, drugs are a weapon of war. And it's one that's being embraced. And as long as we're going to ignore the fact that these are causing psychosis, the problem with the jail is going to grow. And that's just a reality, you know, because I know I went from being on the streets in the 60s to the Army to get away from everything, and it helped me. That was my saving grace. So, you know, handling these situations, you know, are far beyond. You got a captive audience, and that's the first time you can reach it. I've interviewed people that were mentally ill severely, and I walk in the door at Cuyahoga County Jail, and I knew right away they weren't in the right mind. You know, there was no doubt about it. And the circumstances that led them to murder and things like that, that's what the criminal justice system deals with a lot of. So therefore, not bringing the funds in for the sheriff to operate effectively and do their job, because that's what they need those other people out. As far as drugs, I don't think we're not winning anyway because we're not reducing demand. To me, it's a charade, and there is no strategy for reducing demand. You can have one, but they don't want it. People don't want it because, again, I'm a critic of the mental health industry, but at the same time, I know there are good ones out there because I've run into them who went out on the limb. As soon as you say court, they're gone. You know, no doctor wants to show up in court and, you know, deal with these issues. I'll tell you the truth. So I thank the sheriff's people for doing it because that's who inherited it, and they get them there. And if we don't do it, we're going to have a bigger problem on our hands. You know, this is a few bucks compared to the problems that everyone's going to have that, you know, will be getting more serious.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Expand up way past the sales that are happening. And my daughter's a social worker. She went to school 8 years to get a master's degree.
Come on up to the podium, please.
Hear that crap? Yeah, my name is, speaking to this.
Yes.
My name is Paul Ellick. I live at 658 Hall Road, Elyria. It's the township, so I deal with the sheriff a lot. They're great when there's problems at our street. The ambulances are great when there's problems at our street also, but I can't. You killed me with the property tax. You killed me. $1,000 more, a half. I can't afford to pay anything else. Plus, if you put a $5 tax on license plates, you've taxed everything. I can't live like this. I'm on a fixed income. I make $1,600 a month. You're killing me. You're killing a lot of other people. I have 5 of my friends leave Ohio to go to other states that don't have a property tax because they were going to lose their houses. And I can't give any money, you know, like I said, I live on Hall Road. Russia Road's right down here. There's a cemetery right off of Russia Road. I can't tell you how many times I've seen sheriff's cars parked way in the back. I mean, way in the back. And then they're also on where the extension offices. There's Asplund's got all their trucks there. I see them there all the time. And they're just not 5 minutes. I go down Russia Road to Bremke's house, your judge. I buy my eggs from her father-in-law. Then I go to Drug Mart. Then I go to Aldi's in Oakland. I don't go in Elyria. Then I come back, hour and 20 minutes, the car's still there, hasn't moved the spot. You want me to give you money? You're kidding me. I mean, I like the services, I appreciate them, but I see a lot of waste. And you got this woman here that did all this finance. She got a degree in business, she got a finance degree. And she can't be doing that. She needs somebody to back her up that's got a degree, not just somebody checking stuff. You need a degree for that. I worked construction 30 years. And I bought all kinds of stuff. I spent millions of dollars, and I had somebody cross-checking me all the time. And if I made a mistake, I heard about it. And I didn't know everything. They found cheaper vendors than I was using for 20 years. Sometimes the work wasn't as good, but they found them because they had somebody cross-checking me at every spot. That's what I think you need, somebody to go over the figures. I'm tired of hearing just, hey, oh, this woman looked at it and they're fine. No, have somebody that's got a degree, financial degree, go over it and check it, see if it's right. Check all the vendors like she said she did. That takes a lot of time. That's not just an overnight job. And that's just one vendor. It'd probably take you a week to check them all if you're dealing with 25 vendors, you know, in that just one area. And then you've got 25 different areas. And I don't understand the miscellaneous cost over $1 million. And nobody, you know, I don't get that either. And another thing I want to say up that's out of the whack, but I just want to say this, and I'm going to sit down after this. You're coming after my property taxes. I paid $54,000 for my house back in 30 years ago. Now you're taxing me on $260,000. How can you do that? I paid $54,000. I didn't pay $260,000. I'm not planning on selling. Somebody picked that out of the air, what my house is worth? Have they been in my house? No, they had a drone fly over and look at it. Have they seen anything I've done? No. That's not right. And what are these kids working part-time in the summer, a college kid, and they're doing this and they're telling me what I gotta pay? I don't think it's right. I think it's all wrong. And honestly, after seeing all this stuff and everything that's gone on, and I read the paper, you know, I mean, read all kinds of stuff about your property taxes and blah, 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 blah. I can't vote for another levy for anything.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Commissioner Riddell, Commissioner Gallagher. I'm Homer Taft, 3972 Edgewater Drive in Vermillion. For appropriate identification, I also am a semi-retired attorney and property manager and owner, including in Lorain County. First of all, I'd like to compliment the commissioners for thinking a lot about how to present this on the ballot and having 2 separate sets of public hearings, and being willing to put this on the ballot. I think it's important that folks should make the decisions, and you're giving them that opportunity. That said, as we've even heard here today, there's a lot of folks who have reservations about tax increases, and I think it's going to be a hard slog for any tax increase. So there's many questions I think that you're going to need, and the sheriff and others are going to need to be prepared to respond to in the course of seeking any tax increase. As I understand it, basically about 40% of your budget is being spent in the sheriff's department, and the bulk of that in the jail, a much larger portion of it. There's no doubt that there's a need. There's no doubt that it's impinging on other things in the county, and as I think I artfully saw stated in one of the media, you're suffering from a COVID or ARPA hangover too. And you know, I think the commissioners have tried to very wisely spend that money, but that money's gone and it's not coming back, and hopefully we're not going to keep borrowing money we don't have and printing it. So we at the local level have the responsibility to solve those problems. My ultimate conclusion, and I'll get around to somewhat why, is, however, that your first proposed tax might be wiser than the current version. That is, for law enforcement purposes, not necessarily explicitly for the sheriff's department. And my principal reason for saying so is that something that I was taught by someone when I was very young. There is one absolute in which I believe: things change. Today, all of these matters are expended through the sheriff's office. Can you say forever the transport or medical care or all of the mental health care or the drug care or anything else will necessarily be through the sheriff's office? I don't think you can. You certainly can't control what the state legislature decides or does. So I think you need to allow yourself some flexibility. And so doing it for law enforcement purposes that might allow the commissioners a little more latitude on who needs to do what and who needs to spend what over a period of many, many years, I think is a wise thing to do. And I would encourage you to think about doing that instead of, and I'm sure I hurt the sheriff's feelings a little bit in saying, you know, we shouldn't just give it to the sheriff. And I'm sure the sheriff needs it today. I'm not arguing that point. I'm just looking at the long term, that the commission, whoever are the commissioners 10 or 20 years from now, the commission needs to be involved in how the county is efficiently run. The current sheriff may not be the sheriff then. The current judges may not. The current prosecutor may not. I mean, things change. And so I think you need to make a provision for things changing. There's one other major concern I have, and that also goes to the idea of the law enforcement versus the sheriff's office. You almost certainly must build a jail. I don't believe that we've quantified yet, though I think we have some suspicions, what that new jail would cost. I don't think we have, I know we as the public certainly do not have the slightest idea of how the heck we're going to pay for it. And some of these funds may be needed for that. And some of these funds might be saved in the operation and cost of a jail if we build a new jail. So maybe the latitude to do that to dedicate that to a bond or the like might be wise. And in that regard, I have a conflict. I'm a resident of Vermillion who has enjoyed the ridiculousness of some sewer charges for things that we weren't even necessarily needing to spend. And I want to compliment, and I'll call out Commissioner Moore in particular, who I've worked with on this for a period of time, but all of the commissioners for considering the 6119 project and for finding a better solution for not only Vermillion, but for all of western Lorain County. But right now there's discussions, and it's wonderful that we've gotten 67 million, and I hope that Vermillion will contribute a significant amount to a regional solution. But I've also read that we're considering taking 20 million that's been set aside for the jail to the work on this mega site. I think that would be ill-advised from what I can see. But somewhere, if you take that 20 million, I think you still need to answer the question, how the heck are we gonna pay for the jail? How much is it gonna cost? And if you go to the voters this fall and ask them in November to increase their tax rate, and you don't answer that question first, I don't think many of us are going to vote for it. You need to answer that question. So I hope that the plan is something greater than just, let's give $13 million to the sheriff's office. I think the sheriff's office needs the money. You're getting some money back in the general fund. What are you going to do with it? That's going to be one of the questions that's going to come up. Are you using everything efficiently? I think you guys are doing a pretty good job and appreciate it, but you're going to have to answer that question. So give a lot of thought, and I think if you can, you should move back to the law enforcement and give yourselves a little more latitude for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As always, your comments are well thought. Well, Sheriff, how about I get a few things off the table in today's meeting, and then you can, you're welcome to respond to some of the things that you heard that I'm sure you want to respond to. Because the greatest benefit of the public hearings is that we hear from folks what their issues are, what their concerns are, and it gives us an opportunity not to argue, but an opportunity to present the other side of the coin, and in many cases, allay some of the misinformation that's out there and unconnect some of the dots that got connected that shouldn't have gotten connected. So, first of all, I also feel you're paying on the property taxes. I don't live on $1,600 a month, but I know what the property taxes did very similar to me. And the reality is that decision is on the second floor of this building, and we have nothing that we can do about that. We as commissioners do not control the auditor's processes. He does. That's why we take great pains to elect an auditor separate from the commissioners. He's the only individual that can truly raise your taxes without your permission, because he can change the value of your house, which raises your taxes. And he does that through his appraisal process. And I won't begin to speak to that, but I hope you availed yourself of the Board of Revision. We've been meeting for about, since February. And, at that time, property owners are welcome to come in and take issue with the property evaluations. And the commissioners do have a seat on that board. And we filled our seat this year with real estate agents who donated their time until we had to pay them, but real estate people who truly know the marketplace. It could say, no, this property's not worth this, it's worth that. And so we're very proud of the Board of Revision this year, and we got some kudos from people that there was actually, instead of 3 bureaucrats, there were 3 people sitting, there was somebody sitting on there that actually knew the real estate market. But that is, while it's all coming out of our individual pockets, and taxes are all taxes, okay, they all get paid by the same people. I think it's also important to remember that most of the money from the real estate taxes, 65% of that goes to the schools. And very little of it comes to the county government. The second thing is that we as voters have decided that when we fund things, we want to fund our schools, our mental health and so forth with property taxes, our children's services, and there's many things those are funded with property taxes and levies. The income tax goes to fund the cities, in some cases the villages, and the state. Income tax, we have no access to income taxes. And the third is the sales tax, and the sales tax is the general revenue stream for us. The good news is that, as the first gentleman pointed out, it is a consumption tax, so it's fair. Those with less income and less expenses pay much less in the taxes. The second part that we like about the sales tax, if we're going to have a tax, is that because Lorain County is the lowest in the state and will still be close to the lowest at 6.75, which is what we had for years before ARPA, so we're merely restoring that tax. We still get a lot of business that comes from outside Lorain County because Cuyahoga County is 8%. And if you buy the average vehicle today, you'll save $750 to $800 by buying that car here. And we enjoy that revenue, and we don't have to provide services to that individual in Cuyahoga County. So it's a significant part of the sales tax is paid for by people outside Lorain County who come here and do business, and we're still giving them a good deal. We're not punishing them. They're paying less in tax than they would pay in Cuyahoga County. And so that's the overstructure of looking at the taxes themselves. And so that is why we approach the sales tax. And while we do need to worry about the jail, that's a capital expenditure that will have a revenue stream of some sort. We have yet to decide, because that won't be paid for forever. The operating costs will be paid for forever, and that's why one of the reasons we're restoring the tax to the sheriff's office instead of just to the general fund. History has shown us that the sheriff's department is one of those places that politicians have played games and threatened to cut services and so forth. And we think it's time that law enforcement get its own direct source of funds, and that it knows it can operate on those, immune from the seas of political involvement. As to the operation of the jail, that does come out of the budget that we're trying to fix at this point. And so we know that whether we build a new jail or we keep the old jail, which it is our goal to build a new jail. Again, to the comments made by the first gentleman, we are unfortunately the largest institution dealing with mental health in the county, and the largest institution dealing with drug addiction and rehabilitation in the county. It's not a job the sheriff asked for, but our legislators at higher levels have decided that we need to give folks at the jail the same civilian services they would get on the outside, because they are, in many cases, our neighbors, our friends, and in some cases, our relatives. Not everybody that ends up in Lorain County Jail is a career criminal. And so we need to remember that good people do bad things for the wrong reason, and we need to help them through that. And the new jail, I can tell you, we've been in design now for 8 months, and the new jail will give them the space and the ability to deal with those issues on a much more efficient basis. Having said that, you brought up the 6119, which is not necessarily an expansion for the airport, but that's providing sewers to the western part of the county, because the eastern part of the county is approaching as much development as they can swallow. But the growth is still continuing to come to Lorain County, and either we control it or it will control us. But the sewers will pick up Vermillion, which is in distress. We'll also pick up Elyria and Amherst and so forth. Again, that's another capital expenditure. And while there are a lot of people who say, well, take the money from the jail because I don't want the jail anyway and put it in the sewers. And other people say, take the money from the mall and put it into the jail and all that. Those are all capital expenditures, and they need to have a revenue stream to pay for them that's appropriate. And this board is working very hard to make sure that if we're gonna have expenses that go on forever, we're gonna provide a forever revenue stream. And if we need to provide, capital dollars to do capital things, those are gonna be funded capitally and not out of the general fund. Because to do that means we would have to cut things like children's services and other things that are very important, and to use them to pay for the jail, and that's not a win for the taxpayers of Lorain County. So that's, trying to get rid of all of those, concepts. Mr. Taft, we're doing what you're asking us to do. It's just that we don't have all the answers yet. We've only had the grant from Columbus for the 6119 for 4 days. We've had 5 months of Columbus telling us we're not gonna get it. And all of a sudden, we did get it. So give us a chance to come up with the plan for the 6119. It's only been 4 days. Okay? Having said all that, thank you for enduring my comments. Sheriff, would you like to address some of the things that you heard?
Thank you.
And I think that's pretty cool that I saw you on TV and I saw you over here and your lips weren't even moving.
Exactly. Well, Commissioner Riddell, Commissioner Gallagher, thank you for the opportunity to address some of the issues that were brought up by members of the public. And actually, all the members of the public that showed up today. Appreciate it. There should be 10 times you here instead of just the 3 of you. All of the 3 of you represent very different ideas that have come forward, and especially why we're
You need to speak
put-
into the microphone.
why we're trying to put a 0.25% sales tax specifically for the sheriff's office, and I'm going to address that first. Sir, you're absolutely right. Regarding what the state legislature makes a decision on what the functions of the sheriff would be, there could be an overhaul of Chapter 311 of the Ohio Revised Code at any point down the road. It hasn't been an overhaul in nearly 200 years, but there could be an overhaul to that regarding what the sheriff's responsibilities are. With that in mind, the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer in the county. And when we talk about other law enforcement purposes and entities, we have things like the crime lab, 911, the coroner's office, the prosecutor's office, all of these entities that have to come and work together as a whole. That was no more better pontificated this week when we had the ambush of 3 Lorain police officers. We had every single agency in this county come together in the response of that and the investigation of that case. Unfortunately, we had one of those officers pass yesterday. With that in mind, we have to take a look at this as the leader of that we have a department that can't investigate their own shooting. We have other law enforcement agencies that can do that, and we have to make a decision in those times as the sheriff as to what we're gonna do. The Elyria Police Department has a lot of experience with their detectives. We have new detectives that we have been bringing up, and I did not think that that was the scene, that I put new detectives on a case that was so important, so we decided to assist Elyria and BCI with that case, providing the Elyria Police Department with every known resource through our tactical functions, through SWAT, the bomb squad, and more importantly, an unbelievable relationship with the prosecutor's office and our task force, which all of those are not even funded out of the general fund in regards to our forensic capabilities, trying to find out who this man was, trying to find out why this horrific action even took place to begin with, and putting all those pieces together for a community. In addition to that, we had a very dangerous situation down there, not only a cache of weapons that was recovered in the car, and I apologize for saying this, but the crime scene was absolutely horrific. Police cars shot up, several bullet holes all over the place. Officers with bullet holes in them that suffered and endured what had happened down there. In addition to that, 2 50-pound tannerite bombs were found in the trunk of the vehicle at the scene. One shot into any of those, we don't know what was the mindset. I would only be speculating as far as the suspect that was involved in that case. We had to dismantle both of those 50-pound tannerite devices, and we had to do a controlled detonation of those devices on the scene. From what we were told and what we saw on social media, people felt those detonations all the way to Avon Lake. and it was quite an explosion that took place. 1/2 pound of tannerite suggests a 25-yard or more distance from being safe from the explosion. We're talking 100 pounds. All of when we talk about the sheriff's office and coordinating that, no local agency in this county can afford their own bomb unit. We have local agencies that have formed their own SWAT teams, but it took all of them that day, as we thought initially from the officers that were screaming on the radio and crying for help, we could have had multiple suspects. The area was large that we had to employ. In addition to that, we had drones, we had air support from the Ohio State Highway Patrol. That all gets coordinated through the sheriff of every single county. A lot of times people don't understand, the commissioners can account for this as well too, is that back to its beginnings when Ohio was founded, we are the 17th state coming out of the original 13 colonies, and one of the precipices of the foundation of the state of Ohio is that we would have the power as close to the people as humanly possible. The power in Ohio lies in the counties. We don't have a state police. We have a sheriff. We don't have a state attorney. We have a prosecutor. We have a legislature, but we have home rule of 3 commissioners in all but 2 counties in this state. Those 2 counties have boards, Summit and Cuyahoga, that make decisions on behalf of the citizens here in the county. So a lot of those decisions come through here. As a promise I made when I ran, when we talk about spending the funds, we talk about crime lab and we talk about other places. We seize vehicles, we seize assets, we have large criminal cases. Every major criminal case, the sheriff is in charge of in the county. We work with federal partners, we work with all of our local law enforcement agency partners, and that asset forfeiture is seized by us, goes through the prosecutor's office, and the courts many times award us those assets. We use those monies, such as having appropriate drug identification here in Lorain County. Currently, to send drugs in any criminal case to the state lab takes 9 months turnaround time. All it takes is one, you said you were now a part-time attorney, but one defendant that says that they don't want to sign off on their speedy trial, and we've got a problem. In order to upgrade that crime lab, where did the money come from? The restricted funds of the Lorain County Sheriff's Office. In order to upgrade the crime lab in regards to their firearms identification system and their shot tanks and that would be used, that money came from the restricted funds of the Lorain County Sheriff's Office. So therefore, when we look at our other law enforcement partners, when we do this in the law enforcement arena, we are using the restricted funds that we took in place because, sir, we didn't get that on our own. That came through the assistance of the prosecutor's office. It came from the assistance of the commissioners in regards to appropriately applying through resolutions where those funds were supposed to go. And we make sure that we use those restricted funds, which were not done in the past, to make sure that we can fund the other things. So therefore, that's one of the reasons why I say the money comes through the sheriff's office, because ever since I took office, and you're absolutely correct, there could be a new sheriff in 3.5 years. There could be another sheriff in 20 years down the road. But the point comes down to is that to bring this as close to the people as possible, you make that decision when you select a sheriff as far as how money's going to be spent on how you're going to be protected in your communities. We talked about the mental health and the substance abuse. Commissioner Riddell was very eloquent in saying we are the largest mental health facility in the county. We have situations going on right now that we have one suspect in our custody. He's an inmate, and he remains in our custody because we cannot find a state lockdown institution that will accept this person right now. He is a very difficult inmate for us to take and handle. We get the assistance of our county mental health agencies to help us out with that. And in addition to that, the jail has been very good in receiving, number one, $200,000 in granting to assist just in the opioid remediation. We also receive over $100,000 just to help us in prescription drug cost for those inmates as well too. That brings up another question though when we talk about cost in regarding when somebody comes to our jail. Somebody made the comment about seeing the chief deputy on there making comments about where does money come from this. A lot of times the public does not understand. If you are on Medicaid and you come into any correctional facility in the state of Ohio or anywhere in the United States, the Congress of the United States has established a rule many years ago that once you come into a correctional facility, your Medicaid benefits are cut off at that point in time. So therefore, any surgeries, any medical costs or all that, they are borne on us. And that's hard when we have $1,600 a month payment, that we receive to have to pay for that. But Congress is the one that made that decision to, sir, this is my time right
I
now,
know,
so.
I got a question, and I'm not gonna remember when you're done.
Okay. So anyways, when we talk about those expenses and how they're borne, unfortunately, a lot of those expenses are brought onto us because of federal legislation that has been brought forward. We're working with our state legislatures and our 2 senators right now to eliminate that Medicaid provision. So therefore, when somebody comes into the county correctional facility, we can bill Medicaid for those expenses again, as they would be billed anyway if they were not in the jail. So those are things that we are looking to do right now. One of the things I wanted to address, sir, you asked if my chief deputy had a degree in finance. She does not. My degree is also in psychology and journalism. So what qualifies us to talk about the budget? So I want to answer that question for you. I have not surveyed every single public office in Lorain County, but I think outside of the auditor's office right now, I think the chief deputy and I are the only 2 public officials in Lorain County that actually hold certification from the state auditor's office in public finance. When we ran for office and we looked at these budgets and we got what was available through public records, requests that we made of the commissioners, we found the budget to be absolutely deplorable. After I got elected and we had access to everything in the sheriff's office, we found out that simple mathers, well, they're not simple mathers, they're $1.8 million off, and that was just on the salaries. You had also brought up questions in regards to what are these miscellaneous costs. We had the exact same questions because they did not itemize everything out line by line. That spreadsheet that was shown and that you have a copy of was the first time the chief deputy put that spreadsheet together. She is the one that laid everything out line by line. She worked specifically with the budgeting office of the commissioners and the auditor's office for the first time to be able to make that spreadsheet available so you and anybody else in the public could be able to break that down to see exactly what was in there. We had an ungodly amount of wasteful spending that was going on, and the sheriff that kept coming back, and asking for more money. As a matter of fact, I think I'm the first sheriff to ever approach any board of county commissioners and ask for 2 resolutions to be passed that they don't pay for something that was coming out of the sheriff's office. There are things such as painting the offices, supplies, things like that, to include a $93,000 gym for the deputies that was to be paid for. And that, by law, when we talk about the state legislature, that's the responsibility of these 3 commissioners that are up here. We came to the commissioners and we said that it's not the responsibility of Lorain County taxpayer to pay that. We had asked them to reject that request. We took that money out of the restricted funds, so convicted drug dealers and other people paid for those expenses and not the taxpayers of Lorain County. We keep a very good eye on that. Yes, sir, I agree. Neither myself or my chief have a degree in finance, but we may be the only 2 public officials outside the auditor's office that have that certification from the state auditor. We keep a very close eye on this budget to make sure that every single dime is spent appropriately in favor of the taxpayer on that, and make sure that absolutely nothing is wasted. So with that in mind, when we look at a 1/4%, I know the chief put up there, for $100 is 25 cents. I think it was Commissioner Riddell that also stated, and you saw it in our program when that little map came up, Lorain County is one of the lowest, and we're tied with Butler and Stark, which are also the 2 lowest sales tax in the county. However, everybody needs to understand, what do they have that we don't? Butler has Kings Island. And as Commissioner Riddell had pointed out, when we look at making money off of the people who come into Lorain County to make purchases, people stay at Kings Island, they come from out of state, they come from out of Butler County to stay there. Butler County makes a tremendous amount of money. I will have the exact figures shortly, especially if the commissioners gratefully pass this to put it on the ballot. They far exceed us on the amount of sales tax that they bring in. The other one's Stark. Now keep it in mind, we're all within a few thousand population of the 7th, 8th, and 9th largest counties in the state of Ohio. Stark has the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and also a very large retail establishment around the Pro Football Hall of Fame, that they also make a tremendous amount of more money that we do, that they bring in the sales tax.
Isn't Cedar Point Lorain County?
Cedar Point is actually in Erie County in Sandusky. So now that you say that, Erie County's tax rate is slightly above ours, but they also don't collect inside millage because they make so much money off of the sales tax and the bed tax on Cedar Point that they don't have to collect inside millage. And I know the commissioners are working very hard to bring other things here through travel and tourism and to make Lorain County that destination to be between Chicago and New York and be that very affordable option outside Cuyahoga County for people to spend their money here. But unless we get a Kings Island, unless we get a Cedar Point, unless we get some massive attraction like that will come here, we're not going to see those sales tax revenues like they see in Butler and Stark County. And I know a lot of times say, well, we're tied with the lowest. Why would we want to do that? We are nowhere near bringing in the money that those two counties are in order to be able to afford all this. We run the same size jails. We run the same size sheriff's offices, but their revenue that they're bringing in is far significantly more than what we bring here in Lorain County. I also do appreciate you saying that we provided good services to you in your street. I'm going to leave you my business card also because we do have automatic vehicle GPS locators on all of our cars. I want to know the dates and times that you saw those deputies parked in cemeteries and at trucking places because I want to look into that on your behalf.
I can't read, without binoculars, I can't read the one that's in the graveyard.
Sir, I've got it electronically. I'll know exactly who
right.
it is sitting in there, so.
All right, because I go down there 3 times a week.
Right.
At least, so, I see this a lot.
Mhm.
And I'm not trying to, tear your department up. I just wonder, what's a guy doing there sitting there for an hour?
Well, here's the other thing. I say this all the time to the mayors, the police chiefs. I was a police chief as well. When you're a police chief, the people who live in your community, they're your residents. Everybody in Lorain County is my constituent. I don't care if they live in North Ridgeville, if they live in Lorain, if they live in Vermilion. I answer to each and every 322,000 of you. A police chief answers to one person, a safety director or a mayor. I answer to all 322,000 of you. So you're not tearing me down, sir. I'm accountable to you and the other 321,999.
Well, I live so close, I thought about stopping and saying something one time.
And I invite you to,
I
yes.
thought I would be wasting my time.
No, we're going to follow up on that
Well,
right
like
after this.
They say, the blue flu, the blue guys stick together just like attorneys and doctors stick together. I don't believe it all, I've seen it, so I
Right.
believe it.
Absolutely.
So that's why I didn't stop, or I would have stopped, because I've seen them way more than one time. And like I say, I'm not trying to knock nobody.
No, I want to know
Your
about it.
services were tremendous on my street. I can't, snow plowing's the same way.
Yeah. Sir, you're my boss. I need to know how we're doing, so. Mr. Riddell, Mr. Gallagher, that's all I have to say this afternoon to address. I hope I have addressed the comments of the public today.
I'd
And I
like
know
you to
you
take
have
the
a,
opportunity, though, Sheriff, to take a look. You touched on some of the services you provide in the cities, but I think everybody thinks that the sheriff is just for the townships. But, I'm impressed by your warrant loads and your warrant duties, which I understand is the most dangerous, for many officers, the most dangerous thing they ever do in
It
their
is.
career. So if you'd like to address the services you provide outside the townships, I think this is a good opportunity.
Yeah, one of the biggest things is that we have a civil office, and a lot of people don't even understand what the civil office is. One of the main responsibilities of the sheriff's office is to ensure that the orders of the court are carried out. In addition to that, any sheriff sales and the functions of any seized assets. The civil office of the sheriff handles, on an average, $11 million a year that goes through that civil office alone. That's sheriff sales, real estate, warrants through the court, fines, things like that are also handled. When Commissioner Riddell talks about warrants, the sheriff is also the administrative officer of the Court of Common Pleas. So therefore, all of the judges, it is my job, we always joke around, we had to have a little education. It's my courthouse. The county commissioners provide it for the judges to use. They provide it for me to protect. And by law, I have to provide a certain amount of deputies for that courthouse to protect it, according to the Ohio Supreme Court. We do those protections, and I carry out every order of those judges, because the judge, if they issue an order, they can't just come and arrest Karen, if they wanted to. That has to be executed by me as the administrator of the court. That's why you see my name on every warrant. You see my name on every process that goes out. You see my name on every single commitment for anybody that appears in the jail. I'm the one responsible for all of that. When Commissioner Riddell talks about warrants, we have a warrant squad under the sheriff's office. The most dangerous people, those warrants that originate in the Court of Common Pleas, murder, aggravated murder, rape, arson, etc. It's my staff that effectually and safely executes each and every one of those warrants to make sure that we don't have people running around neighborhoods with guns while, people are chasing them. We've had issues in other counties. We had issues before I took office that we've had other law enforcement agencies that are like, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get this man or woman. Next thing you know, we've got somebody dangerously running through a neighborhood with a gun. We've done a very good job of coordinating all that with the local police chiefs, with the U.S. Marshal's office, and with our office to make sure that it's done safely and most effectively without putting anybody in danger. When we had to detonate 2 50-pound tannerite bombs that were located the other day, we worked very closely with Lorain and the Lorain County Metro Parks, which is adjacent right to where the incident had taken place this week. So therefore, we have to make sure that that happened in the city of Lorain. Who else is going to take care of it? It's the sheriff. Yes. So we send out those notifications, and we also work closely with EMA when we do that as well. So therefore, any special operation, Avon Lake says that they're having issues with cars being stolen. I have the ability to summon bait cars through the state of Ohio. We can put those assets in place, which local police departments don't always have the ability to do that, or they don't have the funds to be able to do that. So our job is to make sure that every single citizen in Lorain County is safe, no matter if you live in a township, and no matter if you live in the city or the village. It's our responsibility to help take care of that. And a lot of people also don't know we have 2 other political subdivisions in the county. That is the Metropolitan Housing Authority and the Metro Parks. And we are responsible for assisting them with any of their needs as well to make sure that those communities are protected to the best of our ability.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
I got a question. Going back to the medical stuff.
Is there a form or?
I
just
think
don't
we'll
know for
allow
the
it today,
record or if
given
you-
that there's not 20 people waiting in line to speak.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that,
Well, you can hear me, I don't need that.
Well,
need
they
it.
need to hear
We
you,
can, but
The
we need
public
you on
needs it,
tape
yeah.
too.
Okay.
The public needs to hear
that's
it.
why I wanted to make sure you were addressed
Okay, well, the
appropriately.
medical
Don't
stuff,
say anything that your family, that you don't want them to hear.
I probably said enough already. The medical stuff, and you get people in there that need work. What if they've got insurance? Is it covered when you go in? Like,
Yes, we bill their insurance. As a matter of fact,
okay,
we
I want
also put
that.
into.
That I wanted to know. And
Right.
do you?
Well, however, we have a corrections business manager that her sole job is to make sure that that's billed, because we have actually received bills for transport by Newburgh Heights Fire Department. When in the world did they ever come out here
Yeah.
and transport a prisoner? We've received bills from somebody going to the ER in Mayfield at the Cleveland Clinic. We've never sent anybody out there. That person's sole responsibility is to go through not only the medical bills, but every expense in the jail to make sure that we're getting billed appropriately. And so far, we're well into 6 figures this year of what she's caught, of what we were billed for that was not our expense.
I was going to ask you, how much do you bill out for transport for other counties or other cities or whatever? Do you have a billing process that you can get money back at for taking care of some of these prisoners?
Yes, and currently right now, that bill goes to them by law. By law, half of my salary has to be set aside for prisoner transport. We well exceed half of my salary for what we've done. And as a matter of fact, just done the state prisons last year, that cost us $1.1 million. And that didn't even include the medical cost or the overtime of the deputies that were involved in those transports. So when we talk about billing out that transport, even now we have to use, because we don't have the staff, if we have to bring in somebody from Indianapolis, somebody has to be picked up from Los Angeles, we have to pay a private company to do that because we don't have the resources to do it now. And that's where a big chunk of that 1.1 million came from. We paid somebody else to do our job. And so therefore, when we look at how we bill out for all of that, we have to look at a transport team having that dedicated. When we talk about other county entities, and also if everything goes through the sheriff's office or if it's law enforcement, sales tax, children's services, I'm sorry, not children's services, but the juvenile court through the domestic relations judges. This also includes every time that a child in their custody goes to the hospital as well. And right now, they're spending money on their own staff to do that, and that's a shared resource through the prisoner transport program that we can actually be reimbursed by the court for that as well. So we have picked apart every single thing in this budget to make sure that, one, we can make money on it, and number two is that we reduce all of our expenses by making that money, so that's a less of a burden onto all of you.
Okay.
Thank you. And to that conversation, Commissioner Moore and I, last year, we cut the sheriff's budget $750,000 because we saw over several years a pattern of these special revenue funds, which are established by the state for a specific purpose. We saw those funds growing at the same time that we were being asked for more money. And it became apparent that there were expenses that should have been paid by those special revenue funds that were being paid by the general fund. So in essence, the taxpayers were paying twice, once through their state dollars and once through their local tax dollars. So we cut the budget, not because the department was operating inefficiently, but it was economically and fiscally inefficient. And we forced those expenses, but those funds won't last forever. That's why we need a permanent revenue stream for the sheriff. And then some of these other functions, they could be paid for by the state, but if the state gets into a budget crunch, they could cut out those funds anytime. And so we need to make sure that there's sufficient, dependable funds for the sheriff's office.
And sir, also to reiterate that from what Commissioner Riddell was saying, the prior sheriff never allocated pursuant to a collective bargaining agreement. Now, we all knew it was coming. We all knew it was there. The collective bargaining unit members of the Corrections Division were allowed to cash out comp time and overtime in the first week of July of every year. That amounted to $163,000 this year. It was never budgeted for by the prior administration, didn't appear in any of the expenses. So what we were able to do, from what Commissioner Riddell is saying, is that we have clerks that work regularly with the carrying concealed weapons licensing and permitting fees. So what we did is that we took that $163,000 out of the carrying concealed weapons fund. We moved that over to those records personnel who handle the CCW application permit process. We put their salaries on that, and we took their $160,000 and used it to pay this commitment through the collective bargaining agreement of this cash out in July. And that's an example of how we use restricted funds for that as well.
Thank you. You've given us quite a bit of time, Sheriff. Are there any other questions for the commissioners or the sheriff?
Could I just observe the comment that if you have two lawyers in the room, you probably have at least 5 opinions?
Thank
And
you.
I want to thank the sheriff for his work.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you, Sheriff. And
Thank you, Commissioner Riddell.
at that point, if there's no further commitment, we will close the hearing.
I'd like to say something.
Oh, Commissioner.
I've been waiting, and both of you guys took things that I was going to bring up in topic. A couple things to let you know with regards to the sheriff. I'm a business person and very fiscally responsible with money, and I'm always watching it. I've taken many opportunities to visit with the sheriff's office, went toward the jail, looked at their facilities, looking at their budgets. The money that, number one, that they're saving taxpayers by being efficient with the way they spend money. Just as simple as going down to they're looking at their food expenses. You know, they're very, very cost watching. They're paying attention to it, looking at the inefficiencies of the structure that they're in. They're doing the best they can with it, with the jail as touring it. And I toured another jail just to see in comparison. I'm a visual person and I'm watching it. As far as budgets are concerned, they have unrooted many expenses that were not in last year's budget that got put into this year's budget, which is also a burden on it. So cleaning up the, in some cases we talk about the ARPA funds, you know, the ARPA hangover. Well, this is the hangover of the prior administration, unfortunately. I commend the work that I see that you guys are doing and how you're watching your budgets and paying attention to it, looking for donations from different organizations to help you guys, applying for grants. You are on top of your game, and I appreciate that. And us three business owner commissioners are watching budgets from every department. Every office in your case, so you can't charge me the dollar. But we're watching those budgets, and as we get tighter and tighter with them, unfortunately some have to be cut. But one of the biggest ones, I'm an advocate of not cutting, and that's safety services. Safety services are so important. Just look at what's happened recently. and Sheriff coming to us with some of the things we need to do in the county to protect our public, or our city, or our buildings and our offices. Money well spent, and thank you for what you've done.
Thank you, Commissioner Gallagher.
Yes, thank you. And to that point, the one last thing that the commissioner reminded me of is that, and I think it got to the heart of Mr. Taft's comments. We are going to rely on the public trust. That's a very fragile thing, and it's not very large. When I was elected to office 2.5 years ago, I think one of the impetus for electing somebody that was not previously elected to a job was to get somebody new in with a fresh pair of eyes, and I think we've done that. Commissioner Gallagher was also a recipient of that wave, and I think that if the people will trust us and they'll let us go, I think that at the end of the day, we will build a jail, we will have economic development, which will help raise taxes for all the institutions in Lorain County without actually raising your tax rate. We need new jobs, new homes, and new construction. We need all those things to fund it. We need to be a growing county. But our commitment is not to do one of those over the other. Our commitment is to fix the jail problem, have economic development, and balance the budget. But we can't do that with the same dollars. And we can't do it with the ARPA money, which unfortunately was left over. To do that would be like inheriting from your Uncle Harry $10,000. So you go on a great cruise and a vacation, and when you come back, you still have to figure out how to pay the bills at home because you've spent the money. And so we intend to do that, and I think today was great conversation on both sides of the issues. One of the more productive hearings we've done in the 2.5 years that I've been here. So I thank the three of you for coming and allowing us the opportunity to tell the other side of the story. And hopefully we've improved your perception of what county government is doing. One last comment, I see you're itching.
Well, I just was going to not just a silly comment. Now, if I need to do something to my house down the road and I don't have limited funds, are you going to put a levy on for me to help me take care of my house and take care of the responsibilities I have, because I'm not going to be able to afford it with all these taxes?
Well,
So
unfortunately,
I need a levy. So you're going to help me out?
well, unfortunately, your revenue stream is your responsibility.
That's what I figured.
Okay. Thank you. With that, we will close the hearing, but I would like a second if the clerk will allow me. I think the sheriff brought it up today. I was born and raised in the city of Lorain, and I have an above average knowledge of the news, and I never for the life of me expected that we would endure the incident that we endured yesterday. You expect that in Los Angeles, you expect it in New York City, you hate it just as much, but you expect, we've never expected that in the peaceful streets of Lorain County. And I would be remiss if we didn't take a moment of silence before we leave today to acknowledge that business and government are still carrying on today, but nonetheless, we've suffered a loss. Thank you. And thank you, Sheriff, for rising to the occasion, in some cases without being asked yesterday, just grabbing the role of leadership and running with it. And you did the county proud.
Thank you, sir.
And I will second his motion.
Anything further? Commissioner Riddell?
Aye.
Commissioner Gallagher?
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.